Hello, my name is Shemesh. I'm the co-founder and chief acquisitions officer at Amerinote Xchange. I'm here today to talk about how to sell a mortgage note. This is the big one. We get a lot of questions about this. How to sell it, how much do we pay, what's the process, how do you choose a reputable buyer, how do we know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. We're going to cover all this. So first things first, just in case you don't know, a mortgage note is a IOU. It's a promise to pay. It has the same financial mechanics as a check would if you write a check to someone. The same way that you would need to endorse a check over to that person, you would need the original ink signature check to do so. The same thing true with mortgage notes. So it has this very similar financial mechanics to writing a check to someone, except it contains usually a monthly payment over a set amount of years with an interest rate. So the financial mechanics in essence is that, but it is basically a promissory note secured by real estate. It can be done by private individuals. It can be done by institutional players like banks and large other institutions. It could be done by bridge loan and hard money lenders, which is considered private loans. So all of these are a form of mortgage debt. So now that we have that out of the way, how do you sell a mortgage note? When I say the word note, you can also interchange that with the word loan. In this particular case, we're going to say note. So how do you sell a mortgage note? A mortgage note is sold very easily. You typically go out, you want to identify a buyer, you want to make sure that you put that buyer through a process in which you understand that they're going to execute and you feel good about that buyer. The buyer will provide you with a quote. The buyer will then, you obviously accept the quote. You move through an underwriting process, somewhat similar to the same type of process that occurs when someone buys a piece of real estate. It's not as arduous as entailed, but it's similar. And then the same way a real estate transaction would close at a title company or an attorney's office, it's identical. So that's exactly how a mortgage note is sold. So to start the process in selling a mortgage note, the first thing you're going to need to do is get a quote. So when you do that, you're going to, obviously using Amerinote as an example here, you go to our website, you click get a quote, you can fill out the information on our site. Where is this information found? The documentation can either be transmitted through email. Of course, I also said it could be filled out on the submission form, but it can be found on a copy of your promissory note. These are the primary documents you want to gather first. Copy of the promissory note signed, copy of the security instrument, that's a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on what state you're in. So that's usually a signed and recorded copy. And then the closing statement from the actual sale. So that can be from the title company, it can be from the attorney's office. It could be called a HUD-1. It's basically a sales receipt, if you would, an itemized sales receipt of the transaction when it closed at the time of sale. With those three documents, that's enough to get a quote. You're going to need payment history and proof of insurance in order to actually sell it. So you would need to include payment history and proof of insurance to that list. And that's pretty much the overall package that Amerinote would need from you, the seller. Everything else we can get on our own. So once you get a quote, we provide you with an offer. It usually takes about 2 to 4 business days, depending on the ruralness of the property, the type of property, if it's urban, suburban, these things matter. So urban and suburban goes very quickly. The more rural, the more special use the property is, the longer it may take. And that also is true for the processing and underwriting of it, which leads me to my next point. In that process of selling a mortgage note, how long does that take? And we can get more into detail with that in the actual process, but that usually is going to take about 3 to 5 weeks, depending on the property type and the cleanliness of the seller's package, the cleanliness of document file and the payment history from the seller. Okay, great. So now that we have a high level of understanding on how we sell a note, what are we going to pay for it? How much are you going to get? This is the big one. This is usually the first question that we get. So the short standard operating answer, assuming that all the payments are on time and have been paid in a timely fashion, and it's a typical residential or commercial property, you're going to see on the very, very low end an offer of about 65 cents on the dollar, and on the very, very high end, an offer of about 95 cents on the dollar. So again, this is assuming all payments are on time. If the payments are not on time, or the payments are sometimes on time, we call that non-performing or sub-performing, then that pricing model will shift according to the characteristics of the loan, and that requires a more individualized look. So I can't get too general, but I can say that it would slip below that 65 cent on the dollar range. 95 cents on the dollar is basically the highest amount of money that you're going to get, not just from Amerinote, from most note buyers out there, but Amerinote is the top paying note buyer. So we see that pretty, I wouldn't say regularly, but we see that quite a bit on an annual basis. The average note offer is roughly lands between 75 cents and 85 cents on the dollar. So if that's helpful, you can take that information and just be prepared to know exactly what to expect. Okay, so now that we covered how to sell a note or how to begin the process, get the quote, and what documents you're going to need, and what you're going to receive for that note price-wise, roughly, let's talk about the process. So what is the process? You submit the deal, you get a quote, you accept the quote, you sign off on the authorization, which is a basic DocuSign, 2 signatures from us. At that point, we move forward. There's 4 things that we look for. Number 1, the documents. We go through the documentation. We make sure there's no language defects or any kind of misrepresentations or contradictions in the documentation. Basically, audit the cleanliness of the actual language. And that's typically an easy thing, right? Most attorneys and title companies, they have that down pretty good, but we'd like to give it another set of eyes on that. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the borrower's background. This is the person or entity making the payments to you. So we're going to do a typical background check that includes bankruptcies, unpaid child support, tax liens, foreclosures. We will do a soft credit profile. And we do not, I repeat, we do not ask you, the note seller, for any sensitive information. So we're never going to ask you for social security numbers or dates of birth. The most that we're going to ask you for from the borrower is maybe an email address and a phone number down the road once the note's purchased so we can stay in contact with them. The third thing that we look at is going to be the property value, the actual collateral securing the loan. We will hire and pay for a local appraiser or realtor to go out to the property and to provide us with our own valuation. That appraiser or realtor will be local to the market. So they typically do not need to go in the property. They can typically do it from the sidewalk or even the driveway, or sometimes they can do a desktop appraisal right from their desk. So it really depends. There are some rare cases where we would need the appraiser to go onto a property. That's in the very rare cases that you have like a windy driveway going up to the property. You can't see the property from the road. Then at that point, there may need to be some additional communication that occurs with the borrower. It's very rare. We typically can get around that, but just to give you some flavor there. The fourth thing that we look for is the cleanliness of the title. So we're basically going to run a title report. In the closing package, typically you should have gotten something called a lender's title policy at the time of sale. If you did not, we're going to spend a little extra time on title. But if you did get a lender's title policy to protect to buy title insurance to ensure the title's clean, then it speeds the process up quite a bit, but we'll communicate with the title company that you use directly so you don't have to. Again, just to recap, the documentation, the borrower, the property value, and the title. That takes about 3 to 5 weeks, and of course we can move to closing. The closing will occur at we can use the same title company that you used to close the deal in the first place. We can use another title company of your choosing. We can pick a title company. We're very flexible there. We can also do by mail closings if that's more convenient. And of course, we also can accommodate folks that do not live in the United States, but may be holding United States mortgages. So we can close at the local consulate in the country in which you reside. And that would be no problem. We have experience with all that, so easy peasy there. Next point is really a matter of just feeling out the market. How do you know you're working with a reputable note buyer? I will tell you with Amerinote Xchange, we are front and center in this space. And you really will have no problem finding with simple Google search or even an AI search, who we are, the fact that we've never ever been in a lawsuit before, the fact that our reviews are somewhere in the 80s of 4.8 or 4.9 star reviews across Google and Yelp. These are all very positive signals that you can easily find. You're going to see dozens and dozens of podcasts. There's a Fox Business News article probably news interview living out there somewhere on the internet from the mid-2010s. So we are front and center in this space. We've been mentioned in Realtor.com, Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance. So we're very visible. The big red flags that you want to look for is if you have a note buyer out there telling you that they're number one in the industry and you do a search for them and you can't find good reviews, you can't find bad reviews, you find nothing. There's no place to leave a review. There's no talk of them at all. this is a massive red flag. I would hightail it out of there as quickly as possible. It's an indication that they're either doing some sort of reputation sanitizing situation where they don't want you to see their previous reputation, or they're just not being honest about the level of experience that they have in the market. Even if you see bad reviews on a company, at least you're seeing something. As long as you can see a place where you can leave a review and they're being fair about it, that is something. But you really want to look for something like Amerinote, positive signals, positive reviews, front and center in the space, multiple decades. It's undeniable. So I hope this has been helpful. I really look forward to serving you. My team looks forward to serving you. We're here to help. Feel free to visit us online. Feel free to call us by phone anytime. We look forward to serving you. Thank you.